You don't know why you're being made to see these things. Nor do I. You're seeing me. I can't even see you. I may be dead by the time you watch this. Very possibly are. You don't know it's the man who's making things he wants you to see. Destroy your television sets now.
Hey all, hope you're having a great day. I'm glad I got your attention. Today we're going to talk about being human. They say a lot of things, but are they telling us the truth? Let's see. Archaic Homo sapiens. Well, what are they? Well, archaic would mean the first or before the humans that we call ourselves today. So I'll read this. Let me just read a little bit for you. Relating to or being an early form of subspecies of Homo sapiens. So there was somebody before the archaic Homo sapien. Interesting. Anatomically distinct from modern humans. Neanderthals in Europe and Solo Man in Asia are usually classed as archaic humans. The archaic humans belong to the same species as modern humans. Not all archaic groups or populations are necessarily ancestral to Homo sapiens sapiens. Interesting it is. According to certain models of human evolution, modern humans replaced archaic populations throughout Asia and Europe after migrating out of Africa in comparatively recent times. It's crazy, you know, because there was a lot of fraudulent scientific research, you know, and yet people still say things like this. Yo! That's cool. We'll see what science says, right? So let's look here. This defines what an archaic human is. So let's read in the middle here. So what it's saying is that the Homo species after H. erectus hominin species classified as archaic Homo typically have a brain size averaging between 1,200 to 1,400 cc, which overlaps with the range of modern humans. Archaic Homo are distinguished from anatomically modern humans by the characteristics of a thick skull. So that's why they were doing all of that skull thing and deciding that some of us are but it wasn't about all of us. It was about a certain species. So it says they have a thick skull, prominent suborbital ridges, brow ridges, and a lack of a prominent chin. Archaic Homo are viewed as a transitional between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, a transitional. So, an evolution. Okay, let's see. What does it say? Here we go. It says, what does it say? Early archaic Homo antecessor has been found in Spain, France, and England. Please, damn. So whose ancestors are they? Is it mine or is it yours? Hey, listen, monkeys aren't just one colour, you know. It was a point where they couldn't flee. Well, we'll get into that in a bit. But at this point, those people that you've just viewed as conversos, which was an insult, by the way, were of European, their dads were Spanish and their mums were African descent. We'll go into that too, and European descent, mixed race. But they never seem to mention that. So they might look Indian, but they're not entirely or at all. And when they say Africa, they mean just below Italy, which my man had already taken over years and years before. But this particular kingdom, which they couldn't get to because of the desert and the sea, it brought them out of the Dark Ages. And when I say out of the Dark Ages, I mean the Europeans out of the Dark Ages, although you can see the foot of the Dark Ages and the person carrying the thing there. And so the men that they haven't mentioned became slaves. So the out of Africa theory, if we're going with modern day Africa, doesn't make sense, does it? Because you can't be out of Africa if you were coming from Spain, France, and England. You know why? Because I've been showing you that everything is not as it seems. I said, look to Portugal. I'm sure some of you thought, what's she talking about? So I read this. Slavery existed since before the country's formation. During the pre-independence period, inhabitants of the current Portuguese territory were often enslaved and enslaved others. After independence, during the existence of the Kingdom of Portugal, the country played a leading role in the Atlantic slave trade, which slaves from Africa and other parts of the world to the American continent. Please notice it says, however, slavery within the African Portuguese colonies was only abolished in 1869. There is no dash between the African and Portuguese. The Atlantic slave trade began in 1444 when Portuguese traders brought the first large number of slaves from Africa to Europe in 1526. Portuguese mariners carried the first shipload of African slaves to Brazil in the Americas, establishing the Atlantic slave trade. See, what you're missing is, why would these small group of Europeans go all the way into the big continent of what is called modern day Africa, which we know isn't, because it's Al-Kabulan, and we know Al-Kabulan means lands of the Arabs and the Franks. Don't people say that the French colonized modern day Africa? So how can you colonize something that's already yours? Because we're not talking about that Africa. See, you call yourself Latina. I'm Cuban as well. But you don't remember where the word comes from. Constantinople, Turkey. Think about it. When the Europeans talk about their discoveries, they say it took them months, sometimes years to get to places. So why would they do that? They wouldn't get out alive and be able to come back. See, everyone's gone through slavery. But it says the indigenous peoples are spread across every inhabited climate apart from Antarctica. And that is what native means. They went here and took people from there and then ferried them over to Europe to teach them the Christian ways, to only ferry them out again to where? And pray, do tell me, why would the Africans who were being enslaved be on ships enslaving people? Like it reads up there. Because they weren't African. And you see, you might wonder why I say these things, because we all want to pull up the white people. But I'd like to dedicate this to the 3 African girls that told my daughter she had no history and no language. But I'll show you why. We have an ancestral connection and there is a root, despite the colour and the hue. Now, if you didn't see it earlier, go back and read where the natives came from. Now, I'm not saying there is no heaven and earth, but when they spoke about heaven and earth, they were talking about places on the map in this world. And maybe you didn't see it when I laid it down, so I'll read it for you now. Bottom paragraph. Exact origins of the word Africa are contentious, but there is much about its history that is known. We know that the word Africa was used by the Romans to describe the part of the Carthaginian Empire which lies in present day. Now, if you think about it, it makes sense. If you were looking at the pictures correctly, you would have worked it out, because it's not about Africa today. It's about Africans, which are the Afars, which are the Ayers, which are the Berbers. Will the real Africans please stand up? If you look closely, you will see 91.4% black, 10%, etc. Afro-European, because these are the Africans, because it was about having the blackest skin back then, because saying black hides your identity. Question, can you say you're woke if you're sleeping on yourself?